The Iran-Israel rivalry is a modern conflict, not an ancient one born from shifting alliances and political upheaval. For years, Iran and Israel were unlikely partners, but the 1979 Iranian Revolution turned them into bitter enemies. This rivalry now threatens to ignite a war with global consequences, from oil prices to nuclear proliferation. Understanding how these nations moved from cooperation to confrontation is crucial. Their struggle draws in world powers like the US, Russia, and China, and puts vital shipping lanes and global security at risk. The specter of a nuclear-armed Iran looms over every decision, raising the stakes for everyone. This story is about choices, of leaders, ideologies, and the events that brought us to the brink in June 2025. By tracing the key moments and players, we can better grasp the present crisis and the dangerous future that may lie ahead. The fate of the Middle East and perhaps global peace hangs in the balance. Before the seismic shifts of 1979, a surprising dynamic existed in the Middle East. Iran and Israel, despite the regional tensions, quietly cooperated, sharing vital intelligence on mutual threats. This cooperation extended to strategic resources, with oil flowing from Iran to Israel and weapons moving in the opposite direction. They were united by common enemies and shared strategic interests, creating an unusual alliance in a volatile region. The Iranian Revolution in 1979, however, shattered this carefully constructed alliance, sending shockwaves throughout the Middle East. The Shah, a key architect of the relationship with Israel, fell from power. Ayatollah Khamenei's Islamic Republic rose in his place, fundamentally altering Iran's foreign policy and severing all ties with Israel. Iran's new regime vehemently denounced Israel as illegitimate, a stark contrast to the previous era of cooperation. In a symbolic act of defiance, the Iranian government handed its embassy in Tehran to the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization. This move signaled a total realignment of power and allegiances in the region, marking a dramatic shift in the geopolitical landscape. Iran, under its new leadership, embarked on a mission to export its revolution. It began actively supporting Shia movements across the Middle East, most notably creating Hezbollah in Lebanon, providing them with training, funding, and weapons. This new proxy force soon became Israel's most dangerous and immediate neighbor, posing a constant threat along its northern border. Iran also extended its support to Palestinian groups like Hamas, further complicating the already tense situation in the region. This support fueled a surge in attacks on Israel, increasing the sense of insecurity and instability. For Israel, Iran had undergone a complete transformation, shifting from a distant, albeit quiet partner, to an immediate and existential threat, requiring a fundamental reassessment of its security strategy. Iran was now operating through proxies on its borders, creating a ring of hostile forces surrounding the country. Iran's overarching strategy was clear. It sought to encircle Israel with hostile forces, creating a strategic disadvantage and increasing its vulnerability, while carefully avoiding direct war with Israel. The goal was to keep Israel under constant pressure, draining its resources and undermining its security. Israel responded by focusing on containing Iran's growing influence, working to counter its proxies and disrupt its regional ambitions. Now seeing Tehran as its greatest long-term strategic threat, surpassing even the challenges posed by its immediate neighbors. The era of quiet cooperation, once a surprising feature of the Middle East landscape, was definitively over. It was replaced by a new era of proxy wars, fought through surrogates and non-state actors across the region. Covert operations became the norm, as both sides engaged in a shadow war of intelligence gathering and sabotage. The relationship was now defined by deep animosity, a fundamental clash of ideologies and strategic interests. This new reality, born from the ashes of the Iranian Revolution, would profoundly define the region for generations to come, shaping the conflicts and alliances that continue to dominate the Middle East today. Unable to risk open war, Iran and Israel fought in the shadows, through spies, sabotage, and proxies. Israel's Mossad targeted Iran's nuclear program with cyber attacks like Stuxnet and assassinations of key scientists. These operations slowed Iran's progress, but never stopped it. Iran meanwhile built a network of proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Syria and Iraq, and support for Hamas in Gaza. This axis of resistance allowed Iran to strike at Israel indirectly, bleeding it through constant low-level conflict. The shadow war created a deadly equilibrium. Neither side could win outright, but both inflicted pain. Each covert action risked sparking a wider war as the line between shadow and open conflict blurred. Israel's sabotage and assassinations kept Iran's leaders on edge. Iran's proxies kept Israel under constant threat from multiple fronts. The balance was fragile. One misstep could ignite a full-scale war. Iran's nuclear program has always been the heart of the rivalry, a persistent source of tension and geopolitical maneuvering in the Middle East. Israel sees it as an existential threat, a direct challenge to its security and survival in a volatile region. In 2015, the Iran nuclear deal, formerly known as the JCPOA, was forged as a potential path to de-escalation. The JCPOA imposed strict limits and rigorous inspections on Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for the lifting of crippling economic sanctions. Supporters hailed it as a landmark diplomatic breakthrough, a testament to the power of negotiation and multilateral cooperation. Israel, however, vehemently opposed the deal, calling it dangerously flawed and arguing that it merely delayed, rather than prevented, Iran's path to acquiring a nuclear bomb. Critically, the deal didn't address Iran's ballistic missile program, a significant point of contention for its neighbors. Nor did it address Iran's support for proxy forces throughout the region, further fueling Israeli fears and anxieties about its long-term security. In 2018, the U.S. unilaterally withdrew from the deal under the Trump administration, a move that sent shockwaves through the international community. The U.S. then reimposed harsh economic sanctions on Iran, effectively shattering the fragile diplomatic consensus that had been painstakingly built over years. In response, Iran gradually began to ramp up its uranium enrichment activities, exceeding the limits set by the JCPOA. These actions constituted a clear violation of the deal's terms, further eroding trust and escalating tensions. The collapse of the JCPOA effectively removed the guardrails that had been in place to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. This led to escalating tensions across the Middle East and intensified the ongoing shadow war between Israel and Iran. With the diplomatic route seemingly closed, Israel and Iran edged closer to the brink of direct military confrontation. The risk of a full-blown military conflict over the nuclear issue became higher than ever before, casting a dark shadow over the region. The broken deal left behind a legacy of deep mistrust and animosity, setting the stage for potential open clashes and further instability. The world now faced a dangerous nuclear crisis in the Middle East, with no easy solutions in sight and the potential for far-reaching consequences. The rivalry between Israel and Iran had entered its most dangerous and unpredictable phase, raising the specter of wider conflict. The next spark, whether intentional or accidental, could easily ignite a devastating regional war, with potentially catastrophic global implications. On October 7, 2023, a day that will forever be etched in the annals of history, Hamas launched a brutal and unprecedented attack on Israel, shattering the fragile peace of the region. The assault resulted in the tragic killing of over 1,000 innocent civilians, leaving a trail of devastation and grief in its wake. Adding to the horror, hundreds were taken hostage, their fates hanging precariously in the balance. Israel responded with a massive and comprehensive war in Gaza, vowing to dismantle Hamas's infrastructure. The stated aims were clear: to destroy Hamas and secure the release of the hostages held captive. Iran, a longtime supporter of Hamas, praised the attack, further inflaming tensions in the region. And as many analysts predicted, Iran activated its network of proxy forces throughout the Middle East. Hezbollah, the powerful Lebanese militia, bombarded northern Israel with a barrage of rockets. Simultaneously, other Iranian-backed militias targeted U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria, escalating the conflict further. And the Houthis, controlling parts of Yemen, brazenly attacked international shipping in the Red Sea, disrupting global trade. The already volatile situation took a dangerous turn in April 2024, as the conflict continued to escalate. Israel conducted a strike on an Iranian consular building in Damascus, Syria, a move that would have far-reaching consequences. The strike resulted in the deaths of several top IRGC commanders, dealing a significant blow to Iran's military apparatus. In a dramatic shift, Iran retaliated directly against Israel for the first time in their long history of animosity. The response involved launching hundreds of drones towards Israeli territory, testing its air defenses. This was followed by a barrage of missiles aimed at Israel, further escalating the conflict. This direct attack marked a major and dangerous escalation in the already tense region. Fortunately, the majority of the incoming projectiles were successfully intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome defense system. But even with successful interceptions, the psychological barrier had been irrevocably broken. The long-standing shadow war between Iran and Israel was now out in the open, a dangerous new reality. In response, Israel swiftly struck back at targets within Iran. The targets included an Iranian air defense site located near a sensitive nuclear facility, signaling a clear warning. With these strikes, both sides had crossed previously established red lines, venturing into uncharted territory, demonstrating a new and alarming willingness to engage in direct military confrontation with each other. The Gaza war had effectively transformed what was once a proxy conflict, fought through intermediaries, into a direct and dangerous confrontation between Iran and Israel. The established rules of engagement, however fragile they were, had seemingly vanished. The entire world watched with bated breath, fearing the potentially catastrophic consequences of the next round of escalation. The Middle East region was now teetering on a knife's edge, with the potential for widespread conflict looming large. The pressing question was no longer if another clash would occur, but rather when and what form the next clash would take, as both sides prepared for the inevitable. In June 2025, the conflict exploded. Israel's Mossad launched a drone strike on an IRGC command center in Iran, killing key officers and crippling Iran's proxy network. Iran responded with its largest missile barrage yet, launching hundreds of missiles from Iran, Lebanon, and Yemen. Israel's air defenses intercepted most, but some struck military and infrastructure targets, causing casualties and damage. Israel retaliated with devastating airstrikes on Iranian missile sites, drone factories, and even suburbs of Tehran. The cost was immense: military assets destroyed, economies disrupted, and civilians living in fear. For the first time, both nations struck deep into each other's territory. The world watched in horror as the Middle East's two most powerful militaries traded blows. Diplomats scrambled to prevent a catastrophic regional war. The conflict had shifted from shadow war to open state-on-state combat. The future was now terrifyingly unpredictable. The risk of all-out war had never been higher. The region teetered on the edge of disaster. At the heart of this conflict are powerful leaders making fateful choices. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei is driven by revolutionary ideology and regime survival, authorizing direct attacks to defend Iran's credibility. Israel's prime minister, under immense pressure, must balance hardliners' demands with military caution, aiming to deter Iran without triggering regional collapse. The US president is a crucial player, supporting Israel, but also working to prevent a wider war that could engulf American forces. Russia and China maneuver for influence, sometimes mediating, sometimes fueling tensions. European leaders push for diplomacy, fearing a refugee crisis and energy shocks. Each leader's decisions, shaped by national interests and personal convictions, drive the conflict's course. The fate of millions hinges on their choices. The June 2025 clashes sent shockwaves worldwide. The US condemned Iran, backed Israel militarily, but also urged restraint to avoid a wider war. Russia and China called for calm, blaming US policy, and positioning themselves as alternative mediators. The EU condemned Iran but pressed Israel to avoid escalation, fearing humanitarian and economic catastrophe. Arab Gulf states, wary of Iran but vulnerable to retaliation, quietly aided Israel's defense while avoiding public support. Jordan shot down Iranian drones, highlighting its Western ties. Qatar and Oman tried to mediate. The old Arab-Israeli paradigm has shifted. Now it's Iran and its proxies versus an informal Israel-US Sunni Arab bloc. But this alliance is fragile, strained by the ongoing Gaza war and public anger over Palestinian suffering. The world's response: condemnation, calls for restraint, and frantic diplomacy to contain the fire. After the June 2025 clashes, a tense ceasefire holds, but both Iran and Israel remain on high alert. Military and economic losses are severe, both nations are battered, but neither backs down. The shadow war has become open confrontation, rewriting the rules of the region. Civilians live in fear. Missile attacks, airstrikes, and economic hardship are daily realities. The conflict has displaced tens of thousands and disrupted global trade. Diplomacy struggles. The US pushes for de-escalation, but trust is gone and the nuclear deal is dead. The UN is sidelined, unable to enforce peace. Four futures loom: all-out war, a new diplomatic deal, a return to shadow conflict, or internal upheaval, especially in Iran. The path chosen will shape the Middle East and global security for years to come. The world hopes fear of mutual destruction will prevent the next, even deadlier round. The stakes have never been higher,